This video is intended to provide a basic overview of APA style formatting. I'm not going to cover everything. I'm going to cover the rules that you are most likely to be using during your time in our program. So this slideshow is available to you through the OWL at Purdue website. Also, it is included in this page on Blackboard for you to review as well. I'm going to move to slide 17. That's where most of the work that I will be talking about begins. Feel free to look at the previous slides on your own. So this is talking about making a reference list. For this reference list, you need to consider what type of resource you are using. Typically, you'll be using a book, a journal article, and a web page for most of the stuff that you'll be doing for us. I will be going over the citation guide in just a minute. Within that citation guide, what I want you to do is try to mirror the sample that they give you and make sure that your entries are listed in alphabetical order and that the lines after the first in each entry are indented. So here's a style guide that is provided to you within that resource. What it does is it gives us each of the types of references that we could be using. It tells us how to format them in MLA, APA, and CMOS, which we will be using APA for all of our work within this program. Currently, it's in the 7th edition, so if you have an older edition, make sure that you are familiar with the most recent additions and changes that they've made. So let's look here. First of all, they're looking at citing books. So typically when you are citing a book, you need the name of the author, when it was published, the title of the work, where it was published, and the publisher. So here is an example of a general book format. This is what I was talking about before when I say that I want you to mirror this example right here. So you see it's going to be the last name, comma, space, first initial, period, space, the publication year in parentheses, period, space. And I'm saying the spaces as well because those are important to include. The title of the work is The Omnivore's Dilemma, A Natural History of Four Meals. You can see that the title of a book is italicized. The first letter is capitalized. If there were any proper nouns within the title, those would also be capitalized. And the first letter after the colon is capitalized. Everything else is lowercase. And that contradicts a lot of what we learned previously. Like, for example, when we learned MLA, we capitalized all the important words. That is not the case in APA. After the title, there's going to be a period, a space, New York, comma, NY, that is the place of publication, colon, space, and then the publisher is listed, and it ends with a period. So that's the format of a book. It goes into more detail about how many authors there are. So make sure that you look and see how the authors would be listed within the example and mirror that example. One of the big things is looking at the ampersand instead of using the word and. That would be in the reference page. When you're looking at in-text citation, it changes a little bit, and I'll talk about that more in just a little bit. So it goes down, even talks about if the book was published or written by an organization, you do that differently. So make sure that you use this citation chart to be able to mirror the example that they give you. Let's move on down to another type of resource that you will likely be using a lot within this program, and that's scholarly journal. And right here is the example of that. This does change from the book. I'm not going to go through each comma and period and space this time because at this point you know that those are important to mirror when you're doing the example. So a big difference within a journal versus the book is the title, the way that we format the title. It is not italicized because you italicize when you use the whole work of something. With a journal article, the article itself is not italicized, but the journal title will be because that is the entire work. Again, you only capitalize the beginning letter, the first letter after a colon, and any proper noun. So you can see that there is a proper noun here, and it has been capitalized. You capitalize all the important words in the journal title. So here's the journal title, and you italicize it, like I said before. Also, the volume and issue number. The volume number is italicized. There's no space after the volume number. The issue number and the parentheses do not need to be italicized. Comma, space, and these are the page numbers where you would find this article within the journal. Notice you do not put a P period for page or PG period. You just put the page numbers, the range of them, and end with a period. There's also examples of different types of resources. Something that we need to pay close attention to, because there's a lot of confusion about this, is use of online sources. So considering a website, that's one that a lot of people struggle with. So if there is a DOI, the digital object identifier, use the DOI and not the URL. So here they give us the URL in most of them. You do need to find the author, if possible, of the website, or it could potentially be an organization. So if you use the entire website, you'll put the organization name as the author. You still need the year. If you cannot find the year, ND, N period, D period, lowercase, can be used instead. The title of the web page would be like this. Notice it's not italicized. If you use the whole website, you do italicize the website name because that's the whole. Just like with the journal and the journal article, if you use the whole journal or you cite the journal title, that is italicized. If you use a piece of the resource but not the whole resource, you do not italicize that. And then you will do retrieved, the date, and then from with the URL. Online journal articles. A lot of times we do find an article online, especially if we're using like our library's database. And this is the way that you would do that. You do not put retrieved from when you're citing an online journal. And typically these days, DOIs are becoming more and more prevalent. So if there's a DOI, please make sure to use that instead of the URL. It goes into blogs, emails, those types of things. So when you are going to create your reference page, make sure that you go to this citation chart or something similar, and you can mirror their examples. Going back, now let's talk about how to create in-text citations. So these are citations that are within your text when you are writing. There's different ways to do these depending on the situation. Typically, you will write your text, and at the end of the summary or paraphrase, you will end it with a parentheses, the author's last name, comma, space, the year, close parentheses, and the period for the sentence goes after the close parentheses. If you have a direct quote from a resource, you will do the same type of in-text citation as previously mentioned, but you will add a comma, space, P period, space, and the page number from where you took that direct quote. If you do not directly quote from the resource, you do not have to put a page number. If you want to include the author's name in a signal phrase, you can do that. The tip here, though, is to always keep the year with the author's name. So you can see the last name of the author, then the year. Then after you have a direct quote, you'll put the page number at the very end. You can separate the page number from the author and the date, but the author and the date always stay together. If you do not have a direct quote in that, you can just leave it as the author's last name, date, state your sentence, and end with a period. Down here you can see that they did not use the author's name in the signal phrase, so they put the citation at the end of the sentence. And I had mentioned this before, if you paraphrase or summarize, then you put the author's last name and the publication year at the end of the sentence. Make sure you note the spacing, the punctuation, and again, here is including the author's name in a signal phrase with the year. And here is the use of multiple reference resources. So when you list them, if you are using multiple resources within one signal phrase, when you list them, make sure that you list them in the order they would be found within the reference page, which should be alphabetical order. And you separate each with a comma. Again, I mentioned this. Here is the authors in the signal phrase, the year, page number at the end with the terminal punctuation after the close of the parentheses. Okay, we're going to move on. When your parenthetical citation uses multiple reference resources, this is the way that you would include them. So let's say that you found multiple articles written by different researchers that are stating the same thing. You want to use multiple resources within one citation. You can do the author last name, comma, space, year. You separate it by a semicolon, space, the second author's last name, and so forth. These, again, should be listed the same way that you would find them in the reference page, and that should be alphabetical. This is what I had mentioned earlier on about the difference between using the word "and" in your author's names and the ampersand. So when you are using author's names within the signal phrase, so it's in the text itself, you're going to use the word "and." If you are using it in the parentheses, so it's a parenthetical citation, you are going to change that word and use an ampersand instead. So up here it's rate and the word annotate. Down here it's rate ampersand tate, because this is in the, if you are citing a work that has more than one author, actually 3 to 5, you're going to identify all the authors in the signal phrase or in the parentheses. And then if you use that same resource again later on, you can use et al. Instead of listing out the names like they did here. And that's for 3 to 5 authors. Initial time that you use them, you will write out all their names. Subsequent times, you would use et al., 3 to 5 authors. If you are citing work with 6 or more authors, then the first time that you use that resource, you will use et al. You do not have to write out all the authors' last names if there are 6 or more at any point during your writing. So this, I don't think that you are going to be using a whole lot. The rest of this, please feel free to go through this whole slideshow presentation that is going to be on the same page as this video. But I have hit and discussed most of the errors that I see frequently throughout the coursework that when I'm grading papers. Make sure that you reference the citation chart that I gave you, mirror their examples, and check back on this PowerPoint for in-text citations.